Welcome back, everybody. It's Dr. Craig Malkin, a clinical psychologist and lecturer for Harvard Medical School, and also the author of Rethinking Narcissism, which is devoted to helping you understand and cope with narcissism in all its forms and all your relationships. I want to talk today about a core problem that keeps people stuck in unhealthy relationships, particularly with somebody who's extremely narcissistic, what it is, and how to help you with it. If you like my videos, please turn on the notification bell when you subscribe so you can catch them and not miss anything. I've talked before about the core of pathological narcissism as triple E. If you haven't seen my videos, I share that information widely. And it's basically that the core of pathological narcissism is exploitation, entitlement, and empathy impairment. So triple E. So I won't go into detail about that because that's not what that is today. There is something that is really important for people to know when they're in a relationship with someone who's extremely narcissistic, especially if you struggle with egoism, because it keeps you stuck. It makes it very hard to see clearly and leave a relationship because it's sort of a reflexive pattern of coping that develops when you're in a relationship where there's abuse or where you feel chronically alone. And it is called triple P. Recently did an interview on this to help people understand the link between trauma and catastrophic thinking. The triple P is prepare, predict, and prevent. Prepare, predict, and prevent. Those are extremely helpful adaptive actions and tendencies in a relationship, except when it turns on us and we wind up feeling like it all falls to us to prepare, predict, and prevent. If you look at what happens in a relationship with somebody who's extremely self-involved or selfish and or abusive, in the case of abuse where it starts to feel unsafe and it starts to feel like it's not in your hands to control either whether or not you feel safe from being called names or put down or diminished in some way, or even physically assaulted. I hope that's not something that you experience. But of course, when we start looking at these dark tetrad characters, like somebody who has narcissistic traits and is high in narcissistic traits, abuse does happen. That's even clear from the research. So I hope none of those things are happening to you, but you might recognize as I start to talk about this that once you feel like it's not in your hands to stay emotionally or physically safe, you kind of got no other recourse except to try to figure out and think through the bad thing that might happen. Keep an eye on it, make sure you are able to predict it and hopefully prevent it. That is what triple P is. It's an attempt to control events, experiences we have been left feeling we have no other control over except to try to prevent them, predict them, and prepare for them. And what happens when somebody gets into that kind of mindset is they often think things like, well, I've got to make sure that I don't speak that way next time, or I need to approach it a little bit differently, or they have strong fight or flight reactions at the first signs of difficulty because what they feel that their job is to do is to be on guard for that terrible thing happening, whether it's an emotional or a physical aggressive response. And the reality is in healthy relationships, it's mutual. We work things out. We can talk to our partners and friends. If we don't like something, we can bring it up. It's not our job to make sure something upsetting or terrible doesn't happen. It is also in the hands of that other person. But again, if you feel like it's not in your hands, you have no other choice but to go into this way of thinking where you can just think it through clearly enough and keep an eye on things enough and prevent the bad thing from happening. This also happens not just with abuse, but with a chronic sense of aloneness. If in a relationship with somebody you are close to, they are so self-involved or slip into unempathic behaviors, and it happens so often that you're consistently in this situation or relationship where you just feel alone, where it feels like they really are not keeping you in mind or your feelings. That deep sense of loneliness really does register in the same way as a physical or a direct emotional threat. For human beings, aloneness is death. So if you're chronically feeling that sense of isolation, again, if it's not in your hands, you're going to go up into your head and think, what did I do? What can I do differently? Oh my gosh, these are the signs that I see. His voice is raised or her voice is raised. They seem to be walking around with a kind of roiling resentment. They seem a little bit on edge. I better watch my steps, sort of the walking on eggshells phenomenon that everybody has experienced at one time or another in their life. That is a sign of triple P. And what happens with triple P is, if you're trying to prevent a terrible outcome in a relationship or some emotional or physical danger, whether it is being alone or direct sense of danger, you're trying to do that by thinking things through. Inevitably, what happens is that you are not focused on self-protection. You're not focused on whether or not these are signs that it is an unhealthy interaction that have nothing to do with you. It's because of how this person is behaving. And even more insidious, you are going to be cut off from normal sources of anger or disappointment. This is a recurring theme in my work. It's a recurring theme here. If you want to break this pattern, which is so linked to feeling stuck in a relationship, and I will explain to you why. If you want to break this pattern, you got to get in touch with those normal senses of disappointment and anger. Here's a perspective shift I often share with people, and this will also help you break the pattern. If you were listening to a friend about some upsetting thing happened, their partner yelling at them or putting them down, or even causing some kind of physical threat or threatening physical harm, or constantly leaving them feeling misunderstood and alone and emotionally isolated, your first response would probably not be, well, why do you think he does that? Why do you think she does that? Do you think she might be narcissistic? Do you think she might be a psychopath? Do you think he might have some kind of problem? Maybe if you can think that through, maybe you can figure that out, you can get on top of this. That would probably not be your first response to somebody you care about, who you hear is going through an experience like this. In other words, you wouldn't go up into your head to try to help them. You would have them empathy. You'd say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. And you also likewise wouldn't say, well, what do you think you can do to prevent it going forward? How can you keep an eye out for signs that trouble is about to come? You wouldn't do that either. I mean, you might coach them to kind of think about their safety, and if it's a really difficult situation, how they could exit quickly and kind of get out, whether it's an emotional threat or a physical threat. But you probably wouldn't focus on what they can do to change it. So if you're not doing that with somebody you care about, a friend, a family member, let's not have you do it to yourself. And the alternative is, if you were trying to predict, prepare, or prevent, what would you be feeling in this interaction? What would you feel in this relationship? And 9 times out of 10, probably more than 9 times out of 10, or probably 10 times out of 10, the answer is, I don't like this. I don't like how I'm being treated. It makes me angry. The whole reason, too, that triple P becomes so entrenched is these are also relationships where it doesn't feel like there's room or safety around being in touch with disappointment or anger. And it's not necessary that you express that disappointment or anger even to the person that you're feeling it towards, only that you be in touch with it yourself. And if you can move aside that old coping strategy of triple P, you're going to be much clearer about what bothers you and the fact that it bothers you, instead of trying to predict, prepare, and prevent. And that is how people get mired in a difficult relationship with triple P. And I hope those are some helpful ideas about how you can extract yourself from that, or at least begin to. If you like my videos, please give it a thumbs up. Again, remember to subscribe by turning on the notification bell. And please comment, because it leads to conversations that lead to videos like this. Thanks, and I look forward to seeing you when I come back.